Hello everyone and welcome to this edition of LVO Summer Series, our tour around the data management world. My name is Martijn Groot, heading strategy and marketing at LVO, and I'm your host for this episode. So today we're finishing our tour of data management issues, and I'll be talking to my colleague, LVO CTO, Mark Hermeling. So Mark, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure, Martijn.
Just maybe to start, we've seen the financial data management space develop very quickly the last few years. What would you say are the sort of main capabilities that firms look for?
I think there are a couple of areas. To start off with, cloud obviously has made a big difference. It allows you to get off the ground quickly. You're shifting your projects from a CapEx to an OpEx model, and you can fail forward. It really gives you the ability to try something out, scale it up or scale it down as needed. Also, there's a shift, and that's in line with cloud, of not purely focusing on the IT side of services, so getting your infrastructure. Also, how can you get services for your business? So more a managed services model is more common now. More people are asking for it. Everybody's familiar with the IT side of things. Everybody's happy to get a cloud vendor to provide you some machines. There's more and more focusing now on services on the business side. And then the last aspect is really the introduction of open source components and open standards. And a key element there for our clients is that you're not tied into a specific vendor. You're less locked in. You're future-proofing yourself because the open source and open standards are a communal direction, so you're all going in the same direction. Overall, it's much easier because it's getting software more commoditized to actually also recruit your internal resources to maintain and extend your solutions.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Just maybe to elaborate a little bit, and from your perspective of, say, the CTO and head of our engineering organization, what are the sort of the main engineering considerations in providing these capabilities?
Yeah, so obviously we need to support cloud with our solutions. Now, for the last 3 years, have been building out a microservice architecture, which lends itself perfectly for cloud rollout, to the point of not being tied into a vendor. You're looking for suppliers, in our case, our product lines to be agnostic. So, for example, our Ops 360 and Alpha run on AWS, Google Cloud, OCI, and even private clouds. So our solution is agnostic to which cloud vendor you're being utilized. From an engineering perspective, the challenge for us is picking the right open standards and open source tech. And there I look extensively at what's the uptake of the open source components, what's the maturity, and what's the popularity. And it's always good when we have client engagement to hear the client actually ask for similar technologies. You're on the right track. And very common requests, and also this is what we support in our product lines, is the use of Postgres, the use of Cassandra, the use of Kafka, Kubernetes for cloud orchestration, and Spark for big data solutions. So last item here in relation from an engineering perspective is really how do we make our products more business-centric and really focus our products to be easy to understand for the business and also easy to manage. It has to be configurable. It shouldn't be requiring extensive IT involvement. One is to make sure that the business nomenclature and ontology is incorporated in our products. It's much easier for a business user to use the terms that he's used to than having to use technical terms that roughly fit what he's looking for and get our team involved. So we have incorporated it into our business models, business data model, business processing model, and our UIs and user experiences automatically adapt to that. And because that happens so that the client, the business client, can actually change the configuration of our products and affect change to how data is perceived, how data is managed, and how data and who can do what on data. There's dramatic shortening of the timeline between governance decisions and actual adoption in the business processes and rollout of these changes, which I think is a fundamental shift from how it was in the past.
Thanks, Mark. That makes a lot of sense. So thanks for that. I want to move on to sort of one of our favorite topics, cloud and shift to the cloud. I know you always insist on separating hype from fact and buzz from reality, so to speak. I mean, the COVID pandemic, as we know, seems to have accelerated remote working, and as such, shift to the cloud. I think a lot of firms still seem to struggle with data permissions, tracking sensitive data, tracing information across multiple jurisdictions. Where would you say where would you say we are as an industry when it comes to best practices and or sort of standards in running data management in the cloud?
Yeah, there's clearly a difference between what we currently have and the aspirations of what everybody wants to achieve. Now, on the cloud side, for most of our clients, it's purely a different costing model, and it's predominantly focused on infrastructure as a service. It's an offering where you allocate machines or virtual machines, but it's still very close to the metal. And as I mentioned earlier, people are more looking for services rather than the bare metal. So that's still a change or trend that needs to progress. Also, everybody wants to go to the cloud and use microservice architecture because it's more resilient and more distributed and there's more flexibility. But the flip side of that is that these microservices need to be orchestrated, and that's done through DevOps teams and capabilities. Now, for most of our clients, they're just starting the journey on a DevOps path. They are not experienced with that yet. They also don't have all the skill sets in-house. And it's quite a rare skill set to actually get in-house. There's a lack of resource there. And obviously, we have built up that capacity. But we see that trend in general with our clients. They want to, they are eager to move to the benefits of cloud, but they're still on that journey with their internal teams. And then lastly, regarding the open standards, open standards like OpenID, which we recently added to Ops 360, and more general, like the open banking standard, are there. They are being adopted in certain areas, especially open banking standards being adopted within retail banking. But it's still early days there. And I think there's a lot of potential around these, but they still need to be more commonplace. And we are working hard to incorporate it throughout our product lines and make it as seamless as possible.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Just from a sort of sourcing perspective, there seems to be let's say a very small number of large cloud infrastructure providers, as well as a couple of platforms that provide, for example, post-trade services to the buy side. How do you think sort of asset managers and banks can retain control and prevent lock-in to a few suppliers?
Yeah, that's a good point, Martijn. It's very easy to get locked in, and it's very easy to look at the benefits initially, but then at some point discover that, hey, you have no option and you're stuck with this particular provider. Now, managing the stickiness, there's a couple of areas where you have stickiness. It's around your process, around the service being provided, but also there's data stickiness, right? Sometimes it's very hard once you've built up a large volume of data to lift and drop that somewhere else, and it has a big impact on your business processes. So it becomes more and more sticky. Now, key to really addressing that is knowing and understanding what you're outsourcing, right? You can't outsource a problem. You need to know what the solution is up front. You need to know that, and you need to monitor it internally initially. Now, once you've done that, you can define clear boundaries within what you're looking for to outsource. And you want to make those boundaries as generic and vendor non-specific as possible. Once you've done that, you can use multiple providers because you become more generic. Now, it's sensible also to pick providers that are themselves quite agnostic, right? It's good to provide the products that you use within your cloud context should be able to run on any of these cloud providers, just like we run on AWS, OCI, Google, Azure. It should never be tied to, oh, you need to go this route, because it ties your product and your platform to what you're doing. So look for providers that are agnostic themselves, know what you want to outsource and what the boundaries are, and also to always have room to move. So look at a blend of vendors in different areas, so that if you want to flex and shift direction, you have a vendor that you're already engaged with on the other side, and that keeps everybody honest.
Thanks. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. Prevent lock-in, prevent sort of being tied to proprietary hooks, and keep at least some options open for the future. So moving on from cloud, Mark, I'd like to talk a little bit about data flows. So sort of the onboarding of new data sets, sort of propagating data internally, including using it in analytics. I mean, after all, where data flows is our company's tagline. And I think the sort of exploding volume of data, as well as strong growth in new data sources, like sort of our data sets, has been discussed at length. And I think we in the industry, in the data management industry, can appreciate that data can quickly change from an asset and turn into a liability if it is not used. So what I'd like to ask you is, what do you see in terms of engineering trends in speeding up onboarding of data sets and for example, provisioning data scientists and other end users?
Okay. Yes. I agree. It's one thing to have your infrastructure, but you need to get your data in, and you need to keep an eye on your data and know what you have there. It's easy to start accumulating sets of data that you actually don't use downstream. Now, key element to that is, and we've seen that with the introduction of data lineage in our Prime product, which we extensively use both for the cleansing process, see where data comes from, see the chain of custody, but also from analyzing the quality of that data, how many operations and how many cleansing steps did we need to do to get that data to the end state. And really, once you get to that end state and you distribute it out, you utilize your data, working back from that utilization back to where it originally came from allows you to look at cost allocation. Which data did you use? Which data didn't you use or don't you use? And that's very beneficial because it allows you to prune and to your point, get rid of data sets that are not stale because they're updated regularly, but are not utilized. And we, based on our data lineage statistical analysis service that we have, we can produce that data. We currently produce that data for analyzing how effective your cleansing processes are and producing statistics around that. The next step, logically, is to look at data sent downstream. Where did it originally come from? What data has value to you? But that's for your known data, right? And the biggest challenge, I think, is anticipating your future needs. And as to your point, especially with the alternative data, identifying causality within your data sets and trying out new models and concepts, depends very much on the quality of the data. key quality indicators, KQIs, as I like to call them, on data sets are quite key, so that you know not just what the data is, but how reliable is it for you to determine causality in your models, for example. Now, lineage statistics allows you to also do that. Once you've onboarded your initial set of data, you can start doing that analysis on, how sparse is your data? Are there many gaps? Is it consistent? And that will be key in future for quants to be able to go, right, I've got this data now, how good is it? And that can be after the initial onboarding phase of your base set of data, allows you with the standard separation of now analyzing your base set of data and then moving into, once you've found your causality in the model, uncorking the last couple of years to use the same data sets, but to prove your models.
Okay, no, thanks, Mark. I think the sort of flip side of onboarding, and you touched on it, is sort of propagation, right, or last mile integration. How do you quickly operationalize and incorporate into your business workflows? And I think it often is challenging for firms to sort of effectively mobilize their data assets. Could you elaborate a little bit on the sort of propagation challenges of?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, propagating data is, it's great to cleanse the data and collect it in one place, that you have sets of data that you comfortable that the quality is of reasonable level. But how do you get it to the systems where you want it? So there are two sides to this. One is the last mile integration. We're looking at downstream systems that need this data for their processing, their reporting, their risk assessment. Now, there, the open source components like Kafka, which is a generic distribution mechanism, microservices, which allow you to scale your distribution mechanism more flexibly, help a lot. Because one, the integration with your downstream systems uses standards, and your resources that implement that integration with the systems can utilize these standards. So it's much easier to source skilled engineers to do this work. With the microservices, you can scale it up. So once you've got it up and running and you need more throughput or volume or lower latency, you have the ability to dynamically do that without changing your whole software stack. Obviously, we still have the multi-sourcing and the silos within organizations. And again, because microservices have more an organic, it's more an organic approach to engineering that allows you, once you have organizationally addressed one of your silos, to do that integration work more flexibly and fall in line with what you're doing in other parts of your organization. So there's a lot more ability there to align the organizational decisions with your technical ones. And lastly, of course, it's great to get it to downstream systems, but what about your ad hoc big data access and analysis? How do you get your quants to be able to interactively research your data, explore options? And we've got Alpha, or biotemporal data store, which is a big data store in Cassandra, combined with Spark there, which really allows you to do ad hoc analysis, explore, and it's a scalable environment independent of your data storage. So you can scale up the Spark and Alpha environment independent of your processing, which means you can deal with the need of your quants going deeper or more computationally heavy on their modeling. But also, you have data aggregation. So it's great that you can do ad hoc analysis, but a lot of times your base data that you get in, you want the capability of actually creating derived data. And again, there we're working currently on these stateless microservices. We can generate curves, but it's not limited to curves, but let's use the example. It allows you to dynamically scale because you can spin up more microservices if you have a higher need at specific points in the day or just for a specific project. So it alleviates a lot of the need of going, oh, I want to derive some data. How do I get this? How do I get this action in my organization? Do I need to have more kit there? In combination with cloud, you can quite easily increase your output of that derived data. So I think those are the three aspects. One is downstream integration. The other one is ad hoc querying, where we use things like Cassandra and Spark, our alpha product. And then the generation of derived data, which really alleviates a lot of pressure for your downstream systems, right? You can go, oh, well, you don't have to do that in a localized system. You can have a lot of pre-processing done, which is generic for that system, but also other systems. And what that means is that even your derived data is coming from one source, right? So it's consistent between the different systems. What you see quite often is that because calculations are done locally, the results differ between different systems, and you'll get different results from your risk metrics.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks a lot. I think that's an excellent checklist, I think, in terms of what to look for in terms of data capabilities, data management capabilities, as well as caveats. I mean, this concludes this episode of LVO Summer Series on Financial Data Management around the world. We covered quite a lot today in the time we had. Mark, I can only think of one final question. What do you think we should cover the next time?
Good question. How about a pragmatic look at machine learning? There's a lot of hype around it, but how does it actually differ from traditional statistical analysis, and where does it make a difference, or where can it make a difference for us and for our clients?
That's an excellent idea, Mark. So thanks for that. Machine learning and data management. I think we can devote a whole separate series for that. So please stay tuned, and we hope to see you soon.